Well, there we go.
Happy Monday.
I swear to God, we're getting worse at this thing.
Well, it's not that we're getting worse. It's just that somebody in internet world does not like us. We had nothing but issues all day today with our internet.
Yep.
Spent a good portion of the day on the phone trying to reset it up, etc., because we've been hacked. Surprise, surprise for anybody that was watching our last show. You saw it in real time. Something's going on again on Rumble.
Oh, we're there. We're there. So we are, we're really frazzled because we had no internet most of the day, which means we were late getting the show together, which we had all this media to put together. And I just swear, maybe we should just have shows ready to go and play them whenever we need them to go.
I know doing things live is really starting to become an issue for us just because we keep getting hacked. And see, I've got Rumble running on my computer, and yet I still don't see us.
Well, that's interesting because we are streaming to Rumble. So we can go in. I can see if I can edit it. But you then would need to talk while I do that.
Ah, there we are. Yay!
Okay.
Sorry, guys. Really do apologize. But I guess that's what happens when you are over the mark of what our global predators are doing. They decide that they are going to attack. And that is what has happened all day today for us. But it looks like we are finally live. So this weekend, it was, for me, a very busy weekend. Chris...
relaxed on the back deck, did nothing, just chilled.
Oh, it's not that you did nothing. You were busy researching, you were busy writing, but you got to stay home. I was traveling the roads. I made it to the Coburg Best Western meeting, which was the Landowners Association meeting. I only got to stay for about 20-30 minutes, but I did get to say hello to Stefanos. If anybody watches the Kevin JJ Freedom Report show, you'll know Stefanos from there. So I did get to see Stefanos, and we had a great conversation.
Right.
And a dear friend, Charlene. And then I hightailed it to Mississauga. Looks like pre-records will be free.
We are working on that. We're bringing a network guy in, and we're going to beef up security around here. So
that's it.
No longer. We will fix this, but just a little bit off kilter coming into the gate today. So anyway.
And then I got to attend the public or People's Union and the CSA meeting on Saturday in Mississauga. That was really interesting. It went for about 6 or so hours. Got to meet a lot of really amazing people who are doing stuff, whether it's connecting with farmers, whether it's alternative parallel societies, whether it's just stickers and T-shirts and what have you, communications. They're doing so much. I was really, really impressed with what's going on in the Toronto area and west of. And then I had the luxury of going to another meeting in Toronto yesterday where, again, I got to hear speakers talk about communication, talk about wellness and health, and talk about our least favorite subject, which is child trafficking and what's going on there, and the SOGI agenda that's happening in our schools, and how the transgender movement, and I don't even like to say that because it's not really the transgender movement, it's really the predators' agenda regarding using the transgender movement weaponizing it against our children. So that was interesting. And of course, we had talks from an LED light specialist in healing. I got to have some treatments done. Fantastic. The treatments definitely did something because within seconds of putting it on my shoulder, I had these weird twitches and feelings down my arm. So I want to say I think it works because it
did something.
It did do something, and I'm a side sleeper. And last night I didn't have any problems sleeping on my sides with my shoulders. So I'm gonna say maybe this LED light therapy thing, maybe there's something to it.
I sleep in a fetal position. Most of the time, I don't know if that helps my back either, but emotionally, I feel a bit better when I rock back and forth and cry all night. So, yeah, not necessarily true.
No.
In World War III. Anyway, so we are doing our second series, Trilateral Commission. This is part two. And we put it out last week when we did the Bilderbergs that we were doing that. And somebody on TikTok, they said, wow, you're like 15 years late to the table, but at least you're sitting there now.
We all wake up at different times, and unfortunately we didn't have a podcast 15 years ago to bring you the information.
Well, we knew about them, but this is for people. There are a lot of people who still don't know, so we're just doing a brief overview of everything to give you an idea for you to, like I say, we create the diving board, you jump into the rabbit hole, and but this is a good start to sort of put all the pieces of the puzzle together while we're sleeping. This is the framework that was built up. And don't for all you people who've been sitting at the table for 15 years, we still have surprises for you too. So don't you worry about it.
You know, when we wake up and we dive in, we dive in. So we may have 15 years of catching up to do, but I'd say we're probably not that much further behind than the rest of you now. Because man, we did a crap ton of reading and researching and vetting. And oh, wait a minute, it says this here. So let's go and research that place now. Oh, and that place refers to this. So we're just connecting dots all over the place for y'all.
It's an ADHD wet dream just going on because you're so many rabbit holes. You can never focus on one thing, and we're just putting stuff in one folder for that, for this show later, and all that stuff. So, but you know, I saw a concerning report today. I don't know when this actually happened, but I saw a report today that the major publishers are suing the Wayback Machine, or archive.org, which is part of the Wayback Machine, is part of archive.org, but they also have books and documents and whatnot. And I source a lot of things from there when we are sourcing out information. So I find a lot of stuff. So they are suing them because the archive.org has borrowing libraries. So you can borrow books for an hour and then you have to return it, or you can borrow it again for another hour. And I guess they don't have limited lending. So these major publishers are saying, hey, you guys are infringing upon our copyright. We don't like it. We all know that's not the real reason they're going to go after the Wayback Machine, because there's so much information there that is still, there's lots of gold there that we can pull out. And occasionally I'll pick up a good nugget that just pushes me forward for more research. So that's a little bit concerning. Not to say that archive.org has not been messed with now for quite a while. It's supposed to be a government-run agency, but they're geo-locking things. And if you don't know what that is, that means you can't see it if you're in Canada. So you have to have a VPN. They're starting to outlaw VPNs in other countries now, including the US, I think, is taking their aim at VPNs. Mm-hmm. So our ability to see this information and get this information is going to be more difficult than ever before.
Well, it's getting tougher and tougher because depending on what Chris is deep diving on, Archive will actually kick him out and lock him out and won't let him go any further. And unfortunately, that happened this morning. But not only did it kick him out and not lock him out, it locked him out of our internet service.
Well, that didn't, but somebody else kind of, yeah, I mean, we could just be paranoid here, but I went in and was ready to set the password. And I went back in to set the password on our routers and redo our security. And I could not get back into the router admin stage, and our password didn't work. Our old password didn't work. So people are messing, I'm sure, with us. And yeah, I mean, not that they locked me out of Internet Archive. That's not kind of the sort of thing. Like if that happened, that was absolutely nothing we would talk about on air for sure. And we're definitely going back to the business meetings beforehand. Anyway, but I did go to 2020 to look up the Trilateral Commission, to look up their old website from 2020. cannot get in. It was locked out for me anyway. I don't know if somebody else can get in there, but would not bring 2020 back up. And the more I tried, the more it would just pop me back out. So there's some interesting things like that happening now and again. So fortunately, I have other sources. They can't cut me off if you don't know where I'm getting it, is all I'm saying. So
there you go.
Yeah.
So the Trilateral Commission, much like the Bilderberg, and this is one thing that we're discovering as we are researching all of these secret society type organizations, these nonprofit, nonpartisan organizations. They all seem to be overlapping the same members.
Well, there is that. You're just the queen of spoiler alerts all the time.
No. Before I got into it, because I just wanted to say, like, it's very interesting. So I've developed this theory, and it's just my theory, that we know a lot of money has gone missing from our government in Canada.
Right.
And our government officials, when there's inquiries done and question periods done, they never seem to have an answer for the missing monies. And I'm beginning to think, because a lot of names appear in all of these nonpartisan, non-political, non-profit organizations that overlap over and over and over and over again. So they say, oh, this committee only meets once a year, but yet it's the same people on like 8-12 different secret society organizations, and they all meet once a year. So I'm thinking, is our government, and I'm just asking the question, I'm just planting a seed because I don't know, but is our government, the money that they cannot answer for, is it perhaps funding these non-profit, charitable organizations, nonpartisan organizations that government officials all seem to be a part of? Are they actually funding these organizations, but because they're not allowed to make a profit, they've got to pay out their directors and their shareholders and their steering committees? So is that where our money's going? And is that why the government cannot answer for where their money's going? Because then we will know it's going back into their own personal pockets.
No, you can't make unfounded accusations like that.
I'm asking a question.
No, our government would absolutely not launder money in Ukraine. Anyway, so, we got to watch our accusations there. Again, I stick with Ukraine. Anyway.
I'm just saying, I'm
it
seeing a pattern.
It is plausible that they're paying their old buddies just to sit on these old boards, and they pay into the WEF, they pay into Trilateral, they pay into Bilderberg, they pay into the UN, they pay in, and all these guys leave off and then go into these places. They're basically getting a pension and then a paycheck from Canada.
Exactly.
That's right. And absolutely you're right. You're right.
Yeah. And they're all donor funded and country funded.
Yep.
So that's just something interesting that I'm finding out as we dive, connecting dots.
So this is from their website. Now we do something, we take from Wikipedia. What does Wikipedia have to say about it? And we take some stuff from that, but we always vet it. And if it's wrong, then, where's Wikipedia right? And where are they lying their faces off?
But it's a good place to start.
It is. Now, this is from their actual website, and I think it's an older version, one of their older versions that I did get into. So about the Trilateral Commission. Trilateral Commission is a global membership organization that for decades has brought together senior policymakers, business leaders, and representatives of media and academia to discuss and propose solutions to some of the world's toughest problems. Founded in 1973 by David Rockefeller, the commission has long been an important venue to incubate ideas and form relationships across sectors and geographies. That is a brief overview. Trilateral Commission, because it is North America, Europe, and Japan.
Yes.
So I'm assuming they're kind of capturing
Western Europe.
Yes. Yeah.
Be very clear. Western Europe, much like the Bilderbergers, Western Europe.
So they're capturing the Pacific Rim, basically, is what it looks like.
Correct.
No. Western Europe is Atlantic, though, isn't it?
Russia is not part of Western Europe. Russia is not part of these. They've been excluded from Bilderberg. They've been excluded from Trilateral Commission.
There's a reason for that, and that is back in the day when they founded this was the capitalist answer to communism, because they were worried that communism was actually gaining ground. So they wanted to see how capitalism could, overtake communism and the other isms. And so they basically built this group to talk about how to push capitalism forward. And now it's kind of gone the opposite way.
But it is also, so the Trilateral Commission, much like the Bilderbergs, was a solution, they thought, to bring the countries together to understand their politics, understand their culture, understand their economies, and also to stifle a third world war from happening, because it came together after the Cold War. So part of their discussions was, arms dealings and politics and how to work better together and understand each other's nations and economics. And maybe they could pull together like similar policies and really just unite on a nice, plain level playing field.
Well, that's how they sell it.
That's exactly.
That's how they sell it to people. Like even the Bilderberger last time said, we just, we would like to work together instead of cause war. Well, that's a great idea. We're in that, but that's always code for we're going to set up a one world government and control you. We're going to control your asses.
Correct. So. And one of the other things that I noticed when they were talking about who was their first board of directors, right?
Brzezinski, right?
Yeah. So Brzezinski, who was a Rockefeller advisor, he was also an advisor to President Jimmy Carter. Now, part of the Trilateral Commission, part of their thing is that they don't allow or they deny anyone who is currently sitting in public office.
Right.
However, the doors are wide open for those they want to put into public office or those who have just left their seat of public office to come on board. So, but a lot of the people, they might not be in public office, but they're the advisors to presidents or prime ministers.
Right. Now, I made a very brief list. This is a partial list. It's nowhere near extensive. But here's some of the more notable people on there. There's Henry Kissinger, who is now dead. George H.W. Bush, Jimmy Carter, Walter Mondale, VP of the United States, Michael Bloomberg, Mayor of New York City, Larry Fink, who is also a Council of Foreign Relations board member. Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock. Mario Monti, Prime Minister of Italy. Jeffrey Epstein was described as an enthusiastic member of the Trilateral Commission, because that's where it got all his business. Mark Brzezinski, son of Zbigniew Brzezinski, and then should be down low, Steve Brunel, Vivian Hunt, British businesswoman and managing partner at McKinsey. And the only reason I put that in there is because we will be talking about McKinsey one day. Wayne Peters from What's Up Canada and I were talking, we were trading information, and he's on to McKinsey like we're on to Brookings. And so we will go into a show about that stuff. But basically, these guys set the policy behind the scenes, and nobody knows that either one of these two really exist. So we brought her up. Andrea Mitchell, Chief Washington Correspondent of NBC News, and she's the spouse of Alan Greenspan. And if you don't know that, he was the chairman of the Federal Reserve.
He was also in the Trilateral Commission, buried in, and a lot of times he'd go to the meetings, but wasn't on the membership.
Oh, good grab. Good eye. Ginny Rometty, former president and CEO of IBM. Madeleine Albright, you remember her, U.S. Secretary of State, very contentious. So that is a brief, notable of notables, and we won't read the whole list here, but here is a slight list of, now this goes back from 1974 to today, so I didn't grab everyone, but these are just a brief list of all of the people who are also on some other council. So it's the Council of Foreign Relations, or on Bilderberg's, or
WEF.
Yeah, we're seeing the Aspen Strategy Group a lot. We're seeing Brookings come up a lot, and I'll get into Brookings in a minute. WEF trustee, you see there, CFR.
Harvard University comes up a lot.
A lot, yeah. Atlantic Council Board, which was new to both of us. So they're Bilderbergers, they're Council of Foreign Relations. They have some sort of affiliate with another group that is also a shadowy global group.
And most of them are nonprofit organizations, and they all get their funding from donors and countries. And if they're not CEOs of for-profit corporations, and if they're not part of other organizations, then they're 100% part of the political scheme work, political setup, or they are huge in our post-secondary education facilities.
Right. Those come up a lot too. Many, many different facilities. Now, since we're going through the notable list, let's do the Canadian list. And that is, so John Charest is on the Canadian list. Rona Ambrose, Roy McLaren, he was a high commissioner a while ago. John Manley, the list goes on, but I just want to highlight the first few there are bolded. Because these people are all in the Privy Council as well. And interestingly enough, Jim Prentice, he's about the fourth, fifth one down there, senior executive vice president of CIBC, is also never been in the government, and he is on the Privy Council as well. And we're setting the stage for a future episode, basically. So Privy Council will be revisiting that at another time.
So where to now?
Introductions. So Privy Council doesn't sound that bad. Just a bunch of people getting together, saying again, like Bilderberg, not setting foreign policy, but here they are with policymakers, go-getters, taskmasters,
advisors to the presidents.
Right. Now, I'm not sure I have much faith in our videos working tonight again, because we're not quite there with fixing our Wi-Fi. So if not, we'll just wind Jody up and let her talk. But we'll try this one. Introduction to
the 1970s saw intense.
Oh, it started going.
It's choppy.
So try it again.
Amongst leaders and significant personals.
No, like I say, didn't have much hope.
Can we send it to Chuchong, and maybe Chuchong can?
No, they're too
in
big.
Telegram.
No, they're too big. So, so we'll have to sort that out. Anyway, we can still walk this through. So these people who have no agenda, this is what Barry Goldwater said. And if you remember Barry Goldwater, he ran against, was it Nixon? I think it was Nixon.
I have no idea.
Yeah, he ran in the 70s against. So Barry Goldwater, he was VP, had a long government history, U.S. Secretary of State, I believe, as well, and then ran for president at one point and lost. Trounced. And if you watch Aaron Russo's document on the undocumented history of the United States, he'll show you how he got completely ousted. Anyways, this is what Barry Goldwater said in his 1980 book with no apologies. Republican Senator Barry Goldwater suggested that the discussion group was a skillful, coordinated effort to seize control and consolidate the four centers of power: political, monetary, intellectual, and ecclesiastical, in the creation of a worldwide economic power superior to the political governments of nation states involved. So Barry Goldwater did not have much faith that these people were on the up and up, and they were not setting policy and just doing discussions. Barry Goldwater did not believe that at all.
No, but he was right not to believe it, because they were actually the ones running the world from behind the scenes, shadow governments, as they like to say, right?
Exactly right. So they have done several reports over the years, and they really take their whacks at communism. One big thing that they've been talking about is this is probably their most famous report. This is the crisis of democracy. And it's the report follows not a pessimistic document. Its authors believe that in a fundamental sense, the democratic systems are viable. They believe, furthermore, that democracies can provide or can work, provided their publics truly understand the nature of the democratic system, and particularly if they are sensitive. Now, I really want to highlight this portion of it, particularly if they're sensitive to the subtle interrelationship between liberty and responsibility. And we talked about this today. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we've got right now, because everybody wants freedom, everybody wants liberty, but nobody wants to take responsibility. And we have become a society that actually tries to advocate their responsibility to a surrogate in every way possible. Right?
Yes, they do. Well, we keep saying too, this movement that's happening across the world, freedom movement, liberty movement. One of the reasons why it's not happening is because people have different definitions of freedom. And for some people, freedom means being an asshole whenever they feel like it. And for other people, freedom means the ability to make choices for themselves and do what they want with moral responsibility and ownership for those decisions they make.
Right.
But until everybody gets on the same page of what exactly freedom means, I don't know how you go forward. Because these global predators 100% have their definitions down pat. They have their goals down pat, and they are working incredibly well together in order to come together and squash us like ants.
Exactly. But just going back to that point, we seem to be, a lot of times we can gain ground.
Yes.
But we can't hold ground. And that's because we have no vision after that. And also the responsibility thing, we've been trained to not be responsible for ourselves. If you think about it, we give up our learning. We want to, our learning, our quest for education and knowledge, we advocate that, and we give that to a teacher who's a circuit for
Yes.
that. We do that with banking, with our bankers. We do that with our politicians. They take on the responsibility of the power of the country. We give it to them. We don't keep responsibility for ourselves. We always want to advocate that, or send up that as an advocate or a surrogate to our responsibility. So we've actually been trained to not take responsibility. It happens in churches. Our responsibility with God is now on the pastor, and he is now the surrogate, and it's his responsibility. If I don't grow, that's his problem. It's his issue. So we advocate that, and we make somebody else responsible for our end of things.
Well, and much can be said. Same with the media. We look to the media, and always have for our
truth.
News, right? Oh, we can trust them because they've already vetted it. They've done their homework. And now we're learning that the mainstream media is really just a propaganda machine that the global predators use at their will to do whatever you want. Now, I did find the video that we just tried. If you want me to try and screen share it and see if that'll work.
Screen sharing has not gone well before, so that's why I am not a big fan of screen sharing.
I know you're not. I don't know if we're up and running here, but I've hit screen share. Is it sitting down below? Yes, it is. There it is. Now, are you able to?
We can try.
There you go. Okay, I'm going to hit play. No sound?
No, that's, yeah.
Or is it because I have my sound muted? Or is it because I have my sound muted? All right. No, it's echoing, isn't it?
Yes.
Because of my
1970s
microphone.
saw intensified
Sorry, guys.
cooperation amongst leaders and significant personals from the countries of Europe, America, and Japan. This cooperation, instigated by David Rockefeller, an American banker, culminated into what was known as the Trilateral Commission, founded in 1973. He saw the importance of including Japan and European nations in global dialogue to push the world forward and into the 21st century. The Commission members included everyone from the United States Secretary of Defense to the CEOs of the largest media houses of the participating nations. An international relations textbook would define world order as the distribution of power among world powers. This redistribution of power would be inevitable with the current global scenario. One of the biggest contributors to this being climate change. With mass migration, depletion of resources, and unpredictable weather, there are bound to be multiple political and economic repercussions. Colonization of Mars and rapid advancement in space tourism in an attempt to be a multiplanetary species will also be a defining factor for the New World Order. The rise of artificial intelligence, China's economic growth, increasing decline of situations in the Middle East, global shift towards the right wing, and data scandals plunging us into cyber warfare brings us the need to evaluate a new world order. The committee will analyze threats and opportunities of the same, and hence consequentially shall also want to define the current world order as it stands today.
Well, it looks like if Michael Chuchong plays it, it might actually work. So we're gonna run it that way. So that's good. Well, there we go. Finally got a video under our belts. Awesome.
We just had to we had to find a loophole.
Right. Okay. So we have firmly established that they say there's nothing going on. It's just a bunch of people trying to come up with good ideas and put out reports, and other people say, maybe not, kind of BS. So here's some of the things they say that makes us a little bit concerned about where they're heading. And that is, this is Megan O'Sullivan, and she is the chair right now.
She's currently the chair. Yeah. Or she was the chair for the 2022 meeting. Sorry. What's happening? Who's adding it?
That's
Is
right.
Michael adding it?
It's
no longer live in a world where governments are the only one.
Okay, and you try, Michael. Awesome. Thanks for helping us make a great show. Sorry about this, folks. I know this makes for really good television.
It's very, very frustrating because we spend all this time putting these clips and stuff together for you to help understand what's going on. And then they hack into our system and we can't play the videos. But I don't know if we mentioned, we did mention that the Trilateral Commission is based on North America, Western Europe, and Japan, but we didn't break down how the membership rolls out. So in North America, they're allowed to have 120 members max. And of those 120 members, Canada gets to supply 20 members to the Trilateral Commission, Mexico 13, and the USA 87. Europe, Western Europe, is allowed 170 members. 20 of those are from Germany. 18 are from France. The UK and Italy also get to have 18. Spain gets to have 12. And then the rest of the countries are allotted 1 to 6 members. And then Japan, which used to be the only one, but as time went on, they have now changed it from Japan to the Pacific Asia membership, and they're allowed 117 members. 75 of those are from Japan. 11 of those are from South Korea. 7 are from Australia and New Zealand. 15 are from, they called it, and I'm going to butcher this because I butcher every name, ASEAN or ASEAN. And those countries are Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. And recently, they've allowed China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan to come into the Trilateral Commission with 9 members. So I thought that was really interesting because China has been cut out of pretty much all of the secret societies that we've so far discussed. China has not been allowed in. Russia has not been allowed in. But just recently, and I believe it was after the 2022 meeting, I might be incorrect on that, they just said that the U.S. and China right now, there's a big, put them up, put your dukes up to see who is going to run the world. And right now they're saying it's going to come down between US of A and China, because China owns all the manufacturing, in the US through different treaties that they've signed in agreements have basically handed over their manufacturing, much like Canada has done, to China. So China has basically gone from a third world country all the way up through the ranks. And now they're saying it's between China and US who's going to win, and that US has to start allowing China to come into these meetings because they are such a superpower right now, and their population is so huge, and they've got all the manufacturing for pretty much every country, it seems. So US has to start letting the reins go a little bit on the control that they have and the power they have, and they've got to start working with other countries, or other countries are going to basically cut the US out, which is what we started seeing with BRICS when the US decided to hold the dollar and sanctions against Russia, because Russia was attacking the US's pet project, Ukraine, that has all of their labs there. They, instituted these economic sanctions against Russia, who is now allies with China. So we're seeing a whole bunch of stuff go on in the world right now, and it's making our world economic status very, very unstable. So these groups are now starting to allow China to come into them and have a say in global policies. And, maybe that's what we're seeing going on here. I know for a long time, I kept saying, China's behind everything. China is the secret government making all of the policies for the rest of the world. And people called me crazy. But more and more, as we investigate, we see that these secret societies have on purpose kept Russia and China out of these meetings that are making huge decisions, or at least influencing the decisions of global governments. And China's not getting a say, and now they're starting to see the repercussions of that with China and Russia coming together. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out on the global scale. Let me see here. So that was something that I found interesting, because that is a little bit different from the other groups that are happening. Now, we know United Nations is talking, and China has a seat at the table there. The World Economic Forum has a seat. China has a seat there. And in fact, the World Economic Forum is touting how amazing China is, and that everybody's policies need to follow that of China. So I think that that's probably why China has now been let in. However, as I said, between China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, they're allowed 9 members. So they're not given a ruling number, but they are at least given a seat at the table.
Nice job with the gift of gab there. Well, Michael and I get those videos set up and transferred over to him. We're going to give him a shot at it. Well done.
Thank you. But while I say, just because this thought is right here and I just put it out there, while they're allowing China a seat at the table, they're not allowing you and I a seat at the table. But all of the discussions that they are having are about you and I. So it's interesting that people who are making decisions that affect yours and my life, directly affecting our lives, do not give us a seat at the table. And they say that the whole point of their discussions, they're secret discussions, because they also operate under Chatham House rules, where everybody's invited in their personal capacity so that they can talk openly in a trustworthy environment. But again, no one is allowed to expose who was at the meetings and who said what. But all of these meetings are because these multi-millionaire billionaires are so concerned about how we live and what's going on in our homes, but they never ever come to our homes, and they never ever survey us, and they never invite us onto their task force. And actually they have a task force. What was it called now? Oh, shoot. I don't know if I printed it off, and I'm not seeing it here. Oh, the Trilateral Task Force on Global Capitalism's Capitalism in Transition. That's what their task force is. And there's 50 people on that task force. And again, they're not you and I, but they're discussing you and I, and they're discussing our pocketbooks. They're discussing our jobs. They're discussing our thoughts, our ideas, our families, but they never ever ask us to join them. They never ask us for our input. They just decide what policies and procedures we would like to see implemented. And then they go ahead and they do it again without asking us for our input. So we're not allowed a seat at the table, but the Chinese are allowed.
So yeah, so they're really, I mean, they're talking about championing democracy, but at the same time, they have issues with democracy. And here's one of the concerning things. So again, this is Megan, and she's the current chair of the Trilateral Commission. Michael, if you wanted to play the Megan video for us, that'd be great.
No longer live in a world where governments are the only ones that can influence the future. In fact, increasingly, we have to think about other entities as being the real engines of change, and be that corporations or universities or even individuals. We need to think about how to shape the conversation, how to bring those groups in, to have investment in and commitment to solutions, and we need to move ahead whether or not we're able to get our governments to agree with our prescriptions and recommendations.
So that says it all right there.
Right?
We need to move around governments because governments can't get the job done. So us entities that are not elected, that take your money through wicked marketing ploys, so we will just move ahead without your governments. What a concerning but arrogant, self-righteous, hubristic.
But all the while saying, they don't make policies.
No.
They have no influence over government. And here she says on tape in her announcement that they're going to take over making policies because government just isn't doing the job.
Right. Like, how do you get so far into your own box that you can't even think that might, I don't know. You live in a free country. She enjoys the freedom of a free country.
Yes.
Yet decides that she wants to usurp the one thing that makes it free, and that's democracy. Actually, it's responsibility. We're going to learn to take that back. But
yes,
at the same time, you get what I'm saying. That is like way over the top. She's so far into her own self that she says that like it's not even a big deal.
Yeah. Imagine. But this is how they all think. We are not a big deal. We do not register on their task force. We don't register in their conversations. But what does register is how they can hold us back because, oh my gosh, the masses might rise up and take their democracy away. It's not our democracy. It's more really of an autocracy, a dictatorship.
Well, yeah, corporate oligarchy. What's fascism? It's fascism is what it is. It's fascism with marketing.
Yeah.
That's all it is. The Nazis didn't have any good marketing. These guys, they just all whitewash it. Literally. And then so see, they're proving it by sending military to knock on doors for health and wellness checks. We are looking into that. We're looking into that. We don't have enough information on that just yet, but we will bring you information once we have it.
So I started talking about their global or their lateral task force or the Trilateral Task Force. And one of the things that they are studying, which you guys are going to love this because you guys are awake. You guys know what's going on and you know about all the other secret societies and what they're doing. So the three challenges that their task force, their 50-person task force is looking at is climate change, how to accelerate the greening of our economies. That's the climate change. Digital revolution and how to ensure individual and firm access, firms, organizations, corporations have access to these technologies. And 3, the inequalities, especially within countries, and how to ensure quality of opportunity. But again, we're not included in these talks, but these talks somehow are supposed to benefit us.
I didn't elect him. Well, and then just going back to Kinsey, I don't know enough about McKinsey, but I'm talking with Wayne about that. Brookings, I'm looking into because Brookings keeps coming up. And every time we look at something globalist, Brookings is always there. And the first time I saw Brookings was when we found that Chrystia Freeland was lying as a journalist about her grandfather and that her grandfather fled the Ukraine when the Nazis came, which was now we know a bold-faced lie that she tried to call the Russians out on misinformation, disinformation. Well, we now know that she's the granddaughter of a Nazi, an actual like card-carrying propagandist Nazi, which is oddly enough the path that she chose. So that's when Brookings came out. Now, it turns out Brookings is, remember we talked about it on the OSFI show, the carbon colonization show, where we've cracked the code. This is what happens. Government wants something. They want to make policy that gives them more power and control. So there's A, they want that. They commission a study or they get an ally to do a study for them. And then while they're getting that study done, they pay actors, like people, to cry for this policy to happen, like UBI, central bank digital currency, universal basic income. Our people are dying without universal basic income, and you get the people to cry and moan on the air, and then the news picks it up, and then they start running with it. Yeah, universal basic income, that's what the people want. Meanwhile, they've been doing this study, and then the study's ready, and then all of a sudden they're going to give the people what they want. They're going to acquiesce. They're going to listen to the people and give the people what they want. But at the study phase, they're making up the baselines. So they make up the baseline, and then they say, derive all of your science from this baseline, but we're going to control the baseline. And that's what they're doing. And that Brookings does that. This is what Brookings does.
Yeah. And that's what the task force did as well. So the 50-person task force were given this mission to, figure out what the fifth global trend was and how they could fix it. So they came up with the climate change and accelerating greening of economies and inequalities, et cetera, digital revolution. But they were given a book, a study, like Chris just said, that they were to gather their information from. They weren't allowed to go outside this book. And the book that they were given was A New Spirit of Capitalism Toward More Sustainable and Inclusive Economies. So they were given that book to read. And from that book, they were supposed to put together their mission, their vision, and the 3 challenges and how to fix those challenges, but only from this book. They weren't allowed to go out and survey people like us. They weren't allowed to actually look at workforce. They weren't allowed to go down on the ground and actually do boots on the ground research and vetting of information. No. The Trilateral Commission wrote a book, gave it to the task force, and said, okay, here's the problems. Come up with the solutions from this book. Right. And that's what they did.
We just gave the example of Anatomy of a Lie with that Embry's show. That's what David Fissman did. Made up a false thing. They sent it out. All the news picked it up as all fake. They had all ran with it. And the government takes the news articles and they read it out and they're saying, we cannot give up mandates just yet because of the science. And the science was bogus. So that's how it's done. We've cracked the code. This is how they're doing it. And so we need to focus on who's doing the studies, and we need to really put our pressure on the studies. The legislation is already going to happen because they've falsified all these documents. And I even remember when they were doing the Senate hearings on the gun control bill, and they said to them, have you guys ever done a study on how much we're going to lose as far as GDP goes? And it was like some huge amount. It was like astronomical.
It was billions.
Because they forgot about tourists. Like hunters come here because we got the moose, right? And they're tired of eating alligator, I guess. So the states it's a huge place for the states to come and hunt. So it's massive dollars in tourism. And then they said, we saw your poll. You guys polled your own people, your liberal base. 75% of them said you don't need it. And they're like, wow, yeah, but we shouldn't ask the question, I guess. It's kind of how they answered that. And they had no answer for any of that stuff. So even when the studies don't go for them, they're still ignoring them. But this is how it's done. It's the illusion that and it goes back to that People versus Littlejohn court case where the judge found we don't question the government because the government gets experts in there. They study these subjects before they even put it into legislation. So they know what they're talking about. Their truth is the truth. So we don't question that. And then we're just going to move onto other things. And that's what happened with COVID and yada, yada, yada.
And the government now knows that that's how the courts are going to rule. So now the government does they commission their own people to do the study, to put in the legislation that they want to put in, knowing the courts are not going to overturn it because of judicial notice.
Right. So if I was a lawyer, for starters, I wouldn't be asking you for donations all the time because I would have my own. But if I was a lawyer, I would question judicial review on everything. I would question those studies and I would force them to make them look at that study. I would be relentless about that. And when they don't want to look at the study, then something's up. Then that judge is on the payroll because y'all corrupt. You are now, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah. Anyway. Okay. Well, we just solved that one. Yeah. So here's some of the people that show up now and again to speak. And there's John Chrétien in the upper right-hand corner. And oddly enough, Jordan Peterson spoke on the stage.
Yeah, so Jordan Peterson spoke on this stage in 2019. He was at the Trilateral Commission, and I just saw a small clip. I think it was like an 8 or 9 minute clip where they asked him about saving democracy and did he think that democracy was worth saving. And he never answered the question, but he went on an 8-minute monologue, and I don't know where it was going. But at the end of it, he finished with what Chris had said earlier about people's freedom, their sovereignty, and how people need to take responsibility for their sovereignty. And once they do that, then they can take responsibility for their own home. And then once they do that, then they can look outside their home and look at the community around them, and then maybe get involved and take responsibility. But it took him like an 8-minute monologue to get there. But I thought that was interesting that someone who is looked at quite highly respected in the freedom movement is guest speaking at the Trilateral Commission.
Right. And we brought up Conrad Black last time, and he's also in he's huge trilateral and a Bilderberger, and he's massive in both of those things, and he's been showing up on freedom stages too. So I smell a rat. He's had the influence of William Randolph Hearst for years and years and years, and he's just not helped our country at all. He's helped it slide further and further down. So why he's ending up on freedom stages is beyond me, because that is not a trustworthy source. Anyway, there's that. So speaking of China, this man had a lot to say about China and the Trilateral Commission.
They reached out to the Soviets during the late 1970s. They wanted to have they want to approach the Soviets and have a meeting and see if you could have a conversation, a dialogue with the Soviet elites. But eventually, because of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, those plans were never carried out. So there were just a few, intentions, a few, interactions, but then it died out. But because they didn't want to appear as taking side in the Sino-Soviet split, then they also reached out to the Chinese. And then eventually they carried out those plans, and they were able to go to Beijing in 1981. And it was very much organized through the Japanese wing of the Trilateral Commission, which had close contact with the Chinese. And there, David Rockefeller and others met with the Chinese leadership, including Deng Xiaoping, who was the de facto leader of China at that moment. And they discussed the opening of the Chinese economy, including overseas investments, how to secure them, and how to basically put China on that kind of liberal path that they envisioned would be the right path for China and try to block any regress to the Maoist era. So that was the intention when they went there to do this. And eventually, I mean, China went in that direction, obviously not just because of the Trilateral Commission's effort in this area, but I mean, they definitely pushed them in that direction also. Yeah.
So there you go. That's no wonder the BRICS are pushing back, you know?
Right.
Yeah, all the communist nations kind of getting together. Now, where does Brazil sit? Are they communist? I'm not sure. Starting to think they might be. India isn't really, but what are they? They're democratic, but also really highly corrupt in the government.
I was going to say, I don't know that they are full-on democracy. Not that we are either, but I think they're closer to democracy than they are communism. But I'm not 100% sure. Most of the South American countries, Brazil and what have you, most of them are under a communist rule, unless they are under the UK. And Brazil, I think they're under. Are they not under the UK?
I don't know. I should know. We should know where they sit because they're getting a lot of news lately.
Yeah, but they are definitely.
Sorry, coughed.
That's okay.
Saving the people from my
I just saw mute come on. I'm like, am I not? Did they not hear?
Yeah.
They are part of BRICS though, and so they have been meeting with the Chinese and the Russians about putting together their own agreement to internationally trade with each other under their own currency.
Huzzah! And so that's got to make the trilats really nervous. But
the American trilats anyway.
Yeah, you want to get your if you want to find out where, like, if the Illuminati exists and that super elite exists, you look where Bilderberg, Council of Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, the WEF, all those guys.
WHO, WEF, and
look
many,
at who
many
sits
more.
on all of those. The Atlantic Council, now all the G summits, who sits on all of those and also is a banker. So there's your people right there. It's always the banker. So Norm Chowsky, he was talking about the democracy portion of them, and he's had an eye on them for a while.
He's written several books on not only the Trilateral Commission, but also the Bilderberg and the WHO and the United Nations and all of those. He is very well versed in these secret societies, and here's something that he had to say about them and democracy.
Of course, business was essentially running everything, but not totally. There were democratizing tendencies in the 60s. Public became more engaged in public affairs. It was considered a serious threat. So he calls on the business community to defend ourselves from this monstrous attack. And he says, look, after all, we're the ones who have the resources, we have the funds, we're the trustees of the universities. We should be able to protect ourselves from this assault that's wiping out the American way, business and so on. That's the Powell Memorandum. And indeed, the lesson was understood, not just listening to him. There was a reaction to the activism of the 60s. The 60s are often called the time of troubles. They were civilizing the country. That's extremely dangerous. But no less interesting than the Powell Memorandum is another publication that came out from the opposite side of the mainstream political spectrum, the book called The Crisis of Democracy, published around the same time by the Trilateral Commission. That's liberal internationalists from the three major capitalist centers, Europe, United States, and Japan. The political complexion of this group is illustrated by the fact that they almost entirely staffed the Carter administration. That's where they're coming from. The American rapporteur, Samuel Huntington, professor at Harvard, the well-known liberal intellectual. What's the crisis of democracy? Pretty much the same as the Powell Memorandum. They said there's too much democracy. People who are usually passive and apathetic, the way they're supposed to be, are pressing their demands in the public arena, and it's too much for the state to accommodate. They didn't mention one group, corporate interests. That's the national interest. These are the special interests. And they called for more moderation in democracy. They were particularly concerned with what they called, this is their phrase, the institutions responsible for the indoctrination of the young. Universities, schools, churches, they're supposed to be indoctrinating the young, and they're not doing their job, as you can see from all these kids running around calling for women's rights, ending the war, and so on and so forth. So we have to have better indoctrination of the young. They were also concerned about the media. They said the media are becoming too adversarial. If you look at what was happening, that's about as much of a joke as Powell. And they said if the media don't control themselves and discipline themselves, maybe the state will have to move in and do something about it. This is the liberals. This is the liberal end of the spectrum. You take these two publications side by side. They differ rhetorically. The Powell memorandum is literally a tantrum. The Crisis of Democracies, big words, moderate, intellectuals and so on. But the message is not that very different. It's saying the democracy is simply a threat. The population has to be restored to passivity. Then everything will be fine. In fact, Huntington, the American rapporteur, says kind of nostalgically that Truman had been able to run the country with the cooperation of a few corporate executives and Wall Street lawyers. That was the good old days when democracy was functioning. You didn't have all these demands and so on.
Yeah, he's a smart dude, and he's got, I don't know, 1,000 books he's written. So yeah, and he's kind of been on this stuff. He's kind of like
He's like
I wouldn't
David
say
Icke.
better educated, but he seems he's more well-rounded and less angry David Icke. Yes.
That's well-rounded, less angry.
right. And then now David Icke's a smart guy and he's educated as well. So I don't want to imply that he's not. But Norm Chomsky's like, he's written so many books and he's what you think of as scholar.
He's well
right?
respected, probably even amongst the higher ranks of corporations. He's probably well respected, whereas I don't think they necessarily respect David Icke, although they really should. But I get why they wouldn't, because he's exposing all of their evil doings. But Norm's made it very, very clear. It is not our government leaders that are actually making policy and leading us. They're the ones that we supposedly elected out of the chosen or selected few. Yep. But they're not the ones that are making policy. It is the corporations, it is the shadow governments behind the scenes that are pulling the strings. So everybody out there that's out there saying, fuck Trudeau and Freeland must go and take down Singh, you're calling out the wrong characters.
Yeah, I've said it before. You're dealing with the symptoms and not the problem. So you may as well go work for Pfizer at that point, because you're not helping anyone.
Exactly.
Right. And it's weird because they're like, we don't even know our enemy. And some people say, well, yeah, you don't know your enemy. Here's who we're fighting. And they will use the same tropes that everyone, it's the World Economic Forum. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Part of it. But yeah.
But it's the Trilateral Commission. It's the BIS. It's the IMF. It's the Bilderbergs. It's the UN.
Right.
It's
the Conrad Blacks with owning all the newspapers. It's the Catherine Tate, and they have a whole board as well of trusted news source global committee that they get together. Yeah, nothing bad can come out of that for sure. And it's coordinated. So, if you look at it, if you pull the mask off this, it's really just Nazism. Exactly. But that's the thing, like
disguised as democracy.
Sure, but we're like, no, it's communism. No, it's Marxism. No, it's fascism. No, it's globalism. And they're just using whatever tool works for them to do whatever they need at the time. Sometimes that's fascism. That's the current definition of fascism. It's not the original definition of fascism, is the marriage of government and business, to usurp the will of the people. And you've got the communism, and you've got socialism, and you've got Marxism, which is the violent end of communism, and we're kind of looking into heading into that. It's all globalism. They're just using those tools because they've taken what has been the most effective over the years, and they're just doing that.
Yeah.
So it's not any one thing, and it's not any one group. It's different groups with different, at the end of the day, it's,
it's a
Satanists,
handful of people
right?
that
Yeah.
are in all these
Yeah.
nonprofit organizations who are actually discussing the policies and doing what they can to make sure that the masses do not overrun the corporations who are
Right.
actually calling the shots. They
Yeah.
are protecting their technocratic, autocratic base that they have built up firmly in the shadows. That's what's going on. That's what they're protecting. And you can call out Trudeau, call out Singh, call out Freeland, call out Klaus Schwab. But at the end of the day, it's a small handful of people that are working behind the scenes. Yes, these people are definitely connected to those. Yes, these people do sit on some of those boards and actually get to partake in some of those discussions and decision-making processes. But at the end of the day, it's not the 338 people sitting in Ottawa or 368 people sitting in Ottawa or however many people are sitting in your provincial legislature making these decisions. It's these shadow secret societies behind the scenes that are making this decisions and then incentivizing corporations and banks to implement the decisions that they've made. And of course, then what we've been seeing recently is our legal system is now being corrupted. And we know that the Trilateral Commission, part of the thing is also looking at not only investments and global trends, mercantile and liberal industrialism and shared understanding of digitization and stuff like that, but they're also looking at the rules, the laws, the minority rights, the trade agreements, the practices. They're looking at all of these and instituting them. That WHO pandemic agreement that's being signed or WHO pandemic treaty, that's not our government putting that together. That's these secret societies
Globalists are doing
putting
it.
that together.
Right. So why are we yelling at Trudeau? Now, his dad, the more we learn, the more we realize that he was like an uber globalist. And this guy, like, he was one of the original bad dudes. And it's funny because we talk about him and we sort of historically bring him up now and again. But the damage he did to this country that we're learning now goes far deeper than anybody ever talked about. And the Trudeau-Bronfman dynasty, those two, that is a marriage made in hell. And the Bronfmans are like on the same level as the Rothschilds, and nobody talks about them. They sold like a $4 billion stake in DuPont in the 60s.
Yeah.
That's how much money they have. They're right up there with the Rothschilds and Rockefellers. And how come they get a pass? Because nobody talks about them. So we'll be talking about them.
They're one of those secret names. They're the ones that are on the list of members, but not on the published list of members.
Right.
They kind of skirt behind the scenes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, maybe I shouldn't have said we're going to talk about them because now we get our brake lines cut. Anyway, so so we don't even have a handle on who is in charge of our own country, let alone. So we're not going to take them all down. We're not going to out them all. We're not going to break them all apart. But slowly but surely we are dismantling their plans.
Right.
And they are freaking out. Like I believe they are freaking out because we are unlearning what we learned and learning what we didn't know so fast, right? And their arrogance and their hubris is going to work against them.
Exactly. And this last clip that we have, because it looks like Michael Chuchong has been the savior. Everything's been shifted his way, and he's now able to get these up and running from his end and not our end. But this last clip goes to show we are ahead of the curve. We are onto their plans, because this last clip not only introduces, again, who the Trilateral Commission is, how the decisions they make in their meetings you end up seeing the results of those meetings within a few weeks or days, sometimes, of their meetings, but also where their arrogance is taking them and it's up to us to call it out. And I think we've been doing a pretty good job. Not just us, but there's some other authentic media out there.
Yep.
What's Up Canada is doing a really great job
Will
too.
Dove's doing a great
Will
job.
Dove, Prime Gold Media,
Bright Light News.
yeah, we're all calling them out. So good on you guys. Let's play that clip, Michael.
The 2023 one.
2023 one, Michael. What's going on?
I don't know. Well, let's just, you want to sing a song?
He just brought up another one, so maybe it's coming.
It's coming. Yeah. So that's.
Have we called you out? Have they discovered you now too, Michael?
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Welcome to the club, buddy. Oh,
Did he? We can't hear you, Michael.
you're muted.
No, you're still
You're
muted.
still muted.
What is
Oh,
happening?
he's getting a bad format on that one. So it was encoded exactly the same as every other video, but for some reason they don't want to play that. The gist of this video, while you find your mute button there, the gist of this video is they're declaring that 2023 was year one for the New World Order.
Yes. They had a big meeting in 2023. Oh, is that it there?
Yeah, I think we just had to be patient, actually.
Oh, okay.
There's a little blue screen.
No, thank you on the patience, but
at their
There we
annual
go.
state since Trilateral Commission has been an arm of the globalist deep state since 1973. Last week at their annual meeting, a speaker who cannot be identified according to commission rules said that we are now in a period of structural inflation that will last for decades. They said that the free market is over and industry now sets policy. And they said that this year, 2023, is year one of this new global order. Days later, the Federal Reserve Bank announces a July launch for their new FedNow service, which was first announced in October of 2021. The too big to fail banks and all the large processors are already on board, and so is the U.S. Treasury. The first week of April, the Federal Reserve begins the FedNow pilot program for early adopters to become certified participants to help the Fed confirm readiness for their July launch. FedNow is an instant payment processing system that seeks to be the base of all digital transactions, acting as an umbrella company to manage all financial payments. This has been shown to be the gateway to a central bank digital currency, CBDC. FedNow is much like the Reserve Bank of India's instant payment system, the Unified Payments Interface, or UPI. UPI has had huge success in converting rural communities into a complete cashless society. According to the International Monetary Fund, UPI democratized the payment system and paved the way for central bank digital currencies. Central bank instant payment processing is also how the Central Bank of Nigeria introduced its CBDC, Naira, which has been, so far, violently rejected.
Trilateral Commission calls 2023 year one of the New World Order. I just want to let that sink in to your head. The Trilateral Commission had this meeting in India. It was the first, apparently, I wasn't fully aware of this, I guess, but it was the first global meeting that the Trilateral Commission has had. Normally, they had meetings in North America, for instance, for the North American region. They would have meetings in Japan for the Asian region, and they would have meetings in Europe for the European region. Now, what would happen, people would cross over. Like, for instance, Asians might go to Europe to attend the plenary meeting in Europe and vice versa. And in North America, all kinds of members might show up for a meeting in North America. But they've never held a global meeting where forget the regions. Everybody's together now. They're all invited from all the different regions. They're all invited to this meeting in India. And it was still just called the Trilateral Commission plenary meeting, but this was significant. It's the first time they've done this in their 50-year history. So now, okay, here's the deal. They say at this meeting, this is year one of the New World Order. They're saying the Great Reset, essentially, that the Great Reset has flipped. The Great Reset has flipped, and here it is. It's on us. It's upon us right now. I'm going to scroll down to this article and show you some things that I highlighted. And again, this is not something you'll ever see in U.S. press, unfortunately. And here it is, starting at the top. As retired foreign ministers, ambassadors, CEOs, bankers, and academics gathered at the secretive Trilateral Commission's first global plenary meeting in India, perhaps the most influential individual sat quietly off to the side listening. Going down, the Biden administration is trying to convince the world that there is a titanic struggle between autocracies and democracies. I am skeptical about that, one speaker said. Now, let me tell you, this has been the Hegelian dialectic at work, telling the world that autocracies, that is, authoritarian nations, are at odds or at war with democracies. That's the enemies, they're saying. So we need to, like in a democracy, Biden would say, we need to fight against autocracies. And in autocracies, they would say, we need to fight against democracies. Well, this is the false construct. Nothing of the sort. The Trilateral Commission and the whole concept of implementing technocracy in the world has nothing to do with autocracies and democracies. They're both out the door. The whole thing is headed for a scientific dictatorship in the end, run by them. Period. End of subject. Now, they've stated this again and again here. Listen, 3 decades of globalization. This is a direct quote, by the way, from the speaker. 3 decades of globalization defined as integrated, free market-based, and deflationary has been replaced by what will be a multi-decade period of globalization defined as fragmented, not free market-based, catch that, not free market-based, but industrial policy-based and structurally inflationary. I'll argue with the inflationary part, not now, but later. And then it says, he said, this is a direct quote, this year, 2023, is year one of this new global order. There it is.
Well, there you go. So they think, and again, hubris, they think that they've already won. I think differently.
But the question you have to ask, which is what you were saying behind the scenes here, was what happened in 2022?
Yeah, what do they think they accomplished in 2022?
For 2023 to be the first year of the new world order.
We'd have to go back through our shows to see. We covered a lot of stuff in that year, so we'd have to go back through shows. But could be AI, could be the implementation of AI in so many different areas.
Could be the successful implementation of the digital currency between 6 countries that were traded successfully over a 60-day period.
Mm-hmm.
Could be the vaccination rollout. Maybe they're happy with the numbers of people that took the shots.
Yeah.
We know that AI is now running the stock markets and trading on behalf of many of these billionaire and trillionaires
CEO,
successfully.
BlackRock.
So,
yeah, Larry Fink, he says it himself. Trilateralist Bilderberger says himself, we've got the most advanced AI in the world. And if they're running all the markets and they own all the businesses and they're running the commerce, essentially AI is running the commerce for the entire world.
Exactly. And we know as well in 2022 that China started buying up all the grain. They started buying up the gold. They made the Basel system. They upgraded the Basel system, brought in the asset-backed banking system.
Yeah.
or put in the plans, guess I should say, for that. We also know that several countries now, and they talked about it in this report, Nigeria being one of them, have successfully brought in the CBDCs and is working it quite nicely. I think there's 7 countries as of right now that are now running the CBDC.
Didn't say they're rebelling against any of the Nigerians.
Oh, they're totally
ticked.
rebelling.
Yeah.
He said violently rebelling against it, but it's been implemented, right? So there's a lot of things that have happened since 2022, which would justify him calling 2023 the first world order. And I know I was calling 2023 to be probably one of the most horrific years that we were going to see. And if we look back at 2023, all the things that actually happened and how much further their plans quickly progressed, even the courts, to the point where the courts were overturning previous presidents or ignoring previous presidents, and all the legislation that has come down in 2023, all the censorship bills, all the gun control bills, they started introducing in New York City the DigiDogs, the robots, right?
Right. Not Senegal. No CBDCs in Senegal. They said no. Not in the Congo, because good luck getting anything into the Congo.
And not in El Salvador, according to...
Not El Salvador.
Right?
Yeah. So, and there's another one. Not Argentina. There's another one down there. It might be just El Salvador, but I think there's another one that said no. It's not Ecuador. Ecuador said no.
Yeah, and What's Up Canada said people tend to want to call the lug nuts the car when this car is thousands of parts as a wealth extraction vehicle, not built for passengers. So I think What's Up Canada is also referring to the fact that it is a wealth extraction, and maybe that's something else that happened, because we know it was the largest wealth transfer in 2022 from small businesses to big businesses. How many small businesses went out of business?
Well, and don't forget 2008, when the government bailed out the places like ING that held all those mortgages and basically became the largest unofficial landlord.
Oh, and the president of ING? He's in the Trilateral Commission as well.
Dead away. If they're the president of a bank, they're usually there.
Yeah.
So, I actually think Wayne from What's Up Canada just called us lug nuts. I think that was his secret way of doing that. So that is the Trilateral Commission. And this all works together. So we're putting these pieces of the puzzle together. We've still got the Council of Foreign Relations, Committee of 300, and
Club of Rome.
No, our own version of Club of Rome.
Oh, yes.
So, so we're hitting that, and believe me, the research has not come easy on this last chapter of this, but nobody else is talking about it, so you're gonna get it here first. Because
these are our real enemies, and you can call Trudeau and Freeland enemies, and yes, 100% they are, but they have a bigger boss that they answer to, and the bigger boss is these secret societies. And it'd be really interesting to be able to get our hands on all of the membership lists from day one right up to currency. But we know those membership lists, not everybody is on those lists that are actually in the club. Some of those names are hidden, such as James Baker, the director of the Pentagon. His name was not on the list, and yet he was sitting at that 2022 meeting.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to spend the time, try and get the client list for Vanguard, their elite client list, because that's your supposed Illuminati right there. People on that upper list. That's where it lives. Anyway, so that is that one. And then we'll see you Thursday with another show.
Thank you for toughing it out with us. And just a reminder,
That's right.
This Sunday, We have sustainable ownership sovereignty. The offgridfreedom.ca is their website. The Off-Grid Living Summit that is happening in Coburg. So if you go to www.offgridfreedom.ca, you'll get some information on what's happening this Sunday. Chris and I will be there with our dear friend Alex and Lee, who are putting this event on. So
Thanks,
I
Michael.
let them know we would plug it for them tonight.
Right.
So-
And if you want news, you're looking for news, just what's going on every day, stuff that you probably have missed, sign up for our newsletter at tfmreport.com, and you'll get more news than you can handle. Once a week, Sunday mornings, we put that newsletter out, and it's so many links, but
it's stories we don't cover
you'll be
on the
caught
show
up.
because our show would be 4 hours long, and nobody wants to sit and listen to us for 4 hours
yeah, we've
on a
already
Monday and
dragged this
Thursday
out
night.
for an hour and a half. So, so we will see you on
Thursday.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching as usual. Stay safe out there, I guess.